Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 311. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the afternoon of Sunday, April the 16th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Another odd time for a podcast, Sunday afternoon. Why is it? Well, if you happen to notice the James Strong Show Facebook page, I just got back from a desert adventure. A better part of a week in Death Valley, Panamint Valley, the Panamint Mountains, etc., etc. Those of you who are regular listeners to the show may know that this was adventure number 2 in the goal. And it should be everybody's goal. I've said this before. Everybody's goal should be to have the adventure of a lifetime 3 times a year, okay? This was number 2. Number 1 was a trip to Puerto Rico this winter with the trophy wife. Number 2 is a solo trip to the desert, just with me and all my close friends. Yeah, just me. I think I've run out of people who will come to the desert with me. The trophy wife won't go. Buddies who used to go with me are either not here anymore or, well, they just don't care to do it anymore. And my boys are older and have families and other obligations, so I struck out on my own. And this was a Tuesday through Saturday trip to Death Valley. And little mountain climbing, a lot of desert climbing. And the trip was, as always, wonderful, as always, eventful. Some of the events that took place were wonderful. Some of the events that took place, not so much. But you know what? When you go on vacation, when you go on a trip, especially when you're in the wilderness, kind of off the grid, stuff is going to happen. And when things happen, when there's nobody around and there's no cell phone service and the iPhone really doesn't come to the rescue, you have to improvise and figure it out yourself, which is what I did on the trip. Okay. The trip started Tuesday, April the 11th. It started with a 3 a.m. wake-up call because I like to start my vacations as early as possible and normally like to end them as late as possible. But a lot of times you're subject to where the airlines will take you. And to Puerto Rico, we had several choices. To this trip, with this trip, you're really your only choice is Southwest Airlines. And the reason I say that is because of the supplies that I have to take with me. What I mean by that is if you're spending the better part of the week in the desert, off the grid, you need to bring supplies. You need to bring a place to sleep. That's your tent. You need to bring a place to lay. That's your sleeping bag. You need to bring pots and pans and knives, forks and spoons and cups and dishes to eat in. Okay. You have to bring a stove with you to cook that food on. Some of the stuff you can buy when you're there, like you can buy your own food. You have to buy your fuel, of course, because you can't take the fuel on the airplane. It's against regulations. You've got to bring some clothes. If you're going to have all that food, you've got to bring a cooler. So what I do is I've got 2 big containers that I travel in for when I camp. One is a big pull behind duffel bag on wheels that I picked up at RAI. And the other is a Pelican cooler that says it will keep food cold for a week. I will tell you, I've never had it keep food cold for a week, but then you are in the desert and that thing sits in the sun because there's no shade. I will tell you, I loaded it up with ice on Tuesday morning, and by Friday afternoon, the ice was gone, but the water was still cold. So it still would have kept food cold. Probably would have kept food cold into Saturday. So what's that? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 days. 4 full days it would have kept food cold, which is pretty good, actually, if you think about it. Flight was at 6 a.m., which means, and of course, you're at the mercy of Southwest Airlines because they'll let you fly 2 bags free, no more than 50 pounds per bag. Yeah, you can go over 50 pounds, but then you start paying a bunch of money. My 2 bags were 50 pounds, 50.0 pounds, right on the button. The other bag was like 47.5 pounds. So I maximized my opportunities with those 2 bags. Got to Las Vegas early. It was, like I said, boarded the plane at 5:30. Got there a little bit early. Stopped at Walmart for supplies. And I generally get the same stuff all the time. Usually about $67 is what the supplies were. Well, they were $87 this time, and I didn't buy anything extra. Bottom line is, things have gone up. Shocking. Okay. Rented a car from Enterprise, a Nissan Altima, which I know that's not the car you want to go into the desert with, but anybody who's rented a car lately, car rental prices have gone through the roof. Now, granted, I had a year and a half, almost, in fact, I have 2 years worth of rental points that I could use. So I was able to get the car for free, but just a standard sedan for free, which meant a Nissan Altima. If I wanted to upgrade to an SUV or something bigger or better, it would have been a whole bunch more money. No thanks. So I got the Nissan Altima, which held all my stuff, got a little over 40 miles a gallon, so no real complaints there. Well, one minor complaint, but we'll get to that later in the podcast. Breakfast at the Peppermill. I do this all the time. The Peppermill restaurant. It's on Las Vegas Boulevard, and I don't remember the name of the street. It's where the old Riviera Hotel used to be. Okay. If you're on Las Vegas Boulevard and you go due east, you're going to see the old Las Vegas Hilton. I think they call it the Westwood now, something like that. You'll see the old Las Vegas Hilton. The Peppermill is right there. I know if you remember where the old Riviera was, I don't remember. I forget the name of the place that's there right now. The other side of the street is a huge Hilton complex. One of the It's 3 towers that are taller than just about anything on the whole Las Vegas Strip. But Peppermill is the name of the restaurant. They started it in the early 70s. And think of it as, I don't know, Denny's on steroids, maybe. Maybe that's a good way to put it. The restaurant has your standard breakfast fare, 24 hours a day. The other side is actually a casino. Just good food, healthy portions, not cheap. I mean, I had bacon, eggs, hash browns, and toast, and coffee. With the tip, it was $35. But that's what you're going to pay in a place with good food in Las Vegas. Okay, forget about the 99-cent shrimp cocktails. Those days are long gone. Okay, but you have a good meal at the Peppermill. It's where they filmed the Cotton Club. It's where they filmed Goodfellas, Casino, I believe was the name of the movie. They filmed that in the Peppermill. Off to the desert, Enterprise, as they do quite often. Yeah, you're just bring it back full. Okay, well, it's not full right now. It's 7/8 of the way full. And they look at you like, come on, guy, it's 7/8 of the way full. Well, if you bring that car back 15/16 of the way full, they charge you $18 a gallon. So I always let them know, which the good thing is I didn't have to bring that back except for 7/8 full. The bad news is I couldn't just top off the tank and drive into the to the rental car place when I'm done. I had to meter my fuel and pay attention, etc. So a minor hassle. First world problem, okay? But before I got into the teeth of the desert, I stopped in Indian Springs, which basically to get to where I'm going in Las Vegas, you catch, out of Las Vegas, you catch Highway 95, US 95, through Corn Creek, India Springs, the Amargosa Valley, and then into the town of Beatty, okay? And then at Beatty, you pick up 374. That turns into 190 as you cross the California border, and you take that all the way into the Panamint Springs Resort. It's about a 2.5 hour drive, 3 hour drive, something like that. But I always stop for gas in the Amargosa Valley. It's where kind of like the last piece of civilization before you get into the real high prices. There's a big farming community there, and close to Indian Springs. Indian Springs, by the way, that's where the drones are. That's where it's like the drone capital of the world in Indian Springs. There's an Air Force base there, Creech Air Force Base, I believe, is the name of it, and it's where the drones are. And as always, there were all kinds of drones flying up and down, and big ones, little ones, you name them, you saw them. Anyway, picked up gasoline, and I know you're in the Amargosa Valley because You're in Nye County, as Art Bell used to say, the kingdom of Nye, where prostitution is legal. So you've got a gas station, you've got a general store, you've got a casino, and you have a bordello. And it's right there. Here's a bordello. Come on in. Tell us what you want. We'll give it to you and charge you some money. I bought food there. I bought gas there. I've never been to the bordello. Shocking, I know. But that's where I fill up with gasoline all the time. Get into the Panamint Springs Resort, set up camp, had some snacks, relaxed, read a little bit. By that, walked around, met with some people, had a beer, had dinner, cleaned up, took a shower. By this time, it's a little after 8 o'clock. It's dark. The wind started kicking in. I thought, you know what? I've been up since 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, which I'm on Western time now. It's 8 o'clock. That's 10 o'clock at night. So I've been up for the better part of 24 hours. I'm tired. The wind started kicking in, as it does in the desert as the sun goes down sometimes. So fun time was done. I went to bed, slept like a rock all night long. It was a nice night's sleep. Wednesday morning, woke up to breakfast. It was cool in the desert. In fact, the desert really wasn't hot. Tuesday was the hottest day. Death Valley, I think, hit 92. It never got above 85 at the Panamint Springs Resort, but that's about 10 degrees cooler than Death Valley. So it was wonderful weather. It was perfect weather, except for it was windy, which meant it was dusty, which meant it was hazy, and there were clouds. So you really couldn't see a whole lot of the stars. Okay, but the weather was great. Breakfast on Wednesday morning was the same breakfast I had on Wednesday morning and Thursday morning and Friday morning. I had yogurt, banana, an orange, a granola bar, oatmeal with walnuts. Just a nice breakfast and a pot and a half of coffee. And of course, I always like to visit with the folks in camp. And this time was no exception. The Panamint Springs Resort this time was jam-packed. I mean, the last few times I've been, granted, one was during the pandemic, one was just before the pandemic. During the pandemic, there were just a handful of people there, and the Europeans were not there because they wouldn't let them travel. Usually the place is full of Europeans. I guess this time, every place was full and then some. Every camping spot was full. In fact, not only was every camping spot full, but there were spots on the side where guys had brought their big RVs in, hauling their motorcycles for motorcycle riding in the desert. So that place was probably at about 110% of capacity. I'd never seen it that crowded. The good thing about it is there's all kinds of people to talk to. And at night with a beer in hand, and excuse me, and in the morning with a cup of coffee in hand, I enjoy visiting camp and talking to people. So there was no shortage of people to visit with. Okay. After breakfast and taking a breath and visiting with folks, cleaning up the mess, taking a shower, it was time to hike Wild Rose Peak. And I was hesitant because by now it's the 12th of April. On the 1st of April, 12 days previous, the path to Wild Rose was open, but the last mile or so there, they said, was thigh-high snow. And I told myself, if there's thigh-high snow for the last mile, I am not walking this hike. I'm just not going to do it. Well, they had no more rain or snow or precipitation in the last 12 days. It had gotten warmer. The vast majority of that hike, after you hit altitude, is on the south end of the peak. In other words, the sun hits it quite often. So it was fine. There was little snow. There was some snow, not a whole lot. You could walk around the snow for the most part, or the little bit of snow you had to walk through. Other people had walked through it, and while it was about 3 feet high, 2.5 feet high, people had walked a path through it, and it was a little slick and icy, so you just had to be careful. I had my walking sticks with me, which made it a whole lot easier. The highlight of the hike was I met up with 3 other people, 4 of us total. 2 of them, and it was on the way up. 2 of them were were ladies. Actually, there were 4 others, but the one was a fella, the husband of a lady who he had walked so far, and he decided, this isn't as much fun as I thought. He went back to the car, and I met him on the way. By the time we were about probably 7/8 of the way up, I met up with the 2 ladies, the one lady's husband and then her friend. They were both professionals. The friend was a lawyer, and they were both standing in the path. And I said, what's the holdup? And they said, well, look. And they pointed ahead, and there was a big snowbank. They said, we know we're most of the way up. We're not all the way up, but, I don't know that I'm not so sure that I want to go through this snow. And I looked at it, and this was at least thigh-high snow, maybe waist-high snow, and nobody else had really been through it. And I kind of said, I kind of agree with you. I don't think I want to do this either. Just then, there was another gentleman who had gone on ahead. He comes over the ridge and waves his hand and says, hey, I found the trail. Let's come up this way, and the trail picks up. So we just went straight line between him and us and found the trail. And the 4 of us summited together. Beautiful sight, a little bit hazy because of the wind, but the sun was shining. It was relatively warm. I would say probably in the low 40s by that time. Remember, you're at over 9,000 feet. Yes, you're in Death Valley, but you're over 9,000 feet. And there was a lot of wind, but we were fine. We met up there and we talked a little bit, took pictures of one another, and we did our thing. The ladies started down first. After a couple of minutes, I went down after them. Then the gentleman, the retired engineer who had found the trail, he came down a little bit after me. And I'm really not paying attention. The ladies are ahead of me. I'm following them down. I'm just taking in the beautiful sights. I mean, there's Death Valley to my left. There's the Sierra Nevadas to my right. Just breathtakingly beautiful. I'm not paying attention to anything. And once again, the ladies have stopped. And I asked her, I said, well, why have you stopped? And they said, because we've lost the trail. And sure enough, I wasn't paying attention either. You're above the tree line there, and there's no trees, there's no markings, there's just rocks. So there's no true trail. And they had gotten off the beaten path. Okay, now what do we do? Well, let's wait around for the other guy who found the trail before. Well, he never showed because he was actually taking the trail, all right? So the ladies say, you know what, let's just go back up and start all over again and find the trail. Which, hindsight being 2020, that was the best thing to do. But I'm thinking to myself, you know what, I've already peaked this mountaintop. I don't want to go back up there again. Let's just go this way, and I think we'll find the trail. I said, even if we don't find the trail, look across that ridge and see that ledge, that marking. That's the trail that takes us back down to camp. And I've climbed this mountain like 3 or 4 times before, okay? I was pretty sure of myself. The other lady said, I don't think that's the trail you're thinking about. I think that's the trail to the observation tower on Rogers Peak. Because actually, to get to Wild Rose, you actually go at the base of Rogers Peak to come around the ridge and get up to Wild Rose. And I thought, I think you're wrong. But then I thought to myself, well, you're a lawyer, so you're pretty smart, so maybe you're right. So I said, you know what? I think if we go this way, we'll find the trail. They said, okay. So I'm walking, turn around and talk to the ladies, and they're gone. I thought, well, I guess they did change their mind. I guess they did go back to the top to find the trail again. Okay. So I'm by myself, and I can't find the trail. I'm going the direction I think I'm going to go to pick up the trail, and I'm not picking up the trail. And I'm looking over to the ridge, and I thought, you know what? I'm going down when I should have been going up, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to hit this trail. Not here. I'm to the point of no return. So at this point, I've got 2 choices. I can climb back up to the top of Wild Rose Peak, which at this point, you can't see it anymore because there's a false peak. You got to climb to the top of the false peak, and depending on where you get to the top of that false peak, there could be another half mile to walk to get to the top of Wild Rose. Didn't know that I had that in me. So there's plan B. Sure enough, right over there is that ridge. There is that trail that I was 99% sure was the trail that I needed to be on. But to get there, I had to go down the valley, back up the ridge through brush and pines and scree and everything else. But I thought, so before I do this, let me do things old school way, okay? And I got out my compass. Now you're thinking to yourself, well, okay, well, you're a pretty old school guy, Strong. You carry a mechanical compass. Well, not really. I carry an iPhone, which even if there's no cell phone reception, iPhones get what they call SOS service. It's off of a satellite. In other words, you still have an altimeter and you still have a compass. So where I'm standing, I'm thinking, okay, I know for a fact that Wild Rose Peak goes just to the north of Rogers. If I'm looking at Rogers, behind me is Wild Rose Peak, which is what I thought it was. Then, of course, if I'm going south to Rogers, the road out to the trail out to the road should be going to the west. And it was. I thought, you know what? That has to be the road. It just has to be because it's going in the right direction. It's in the right place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I seem to remember it. So I took it. And I'm not going to lie to you. I was a little bit anxious thinking, you know, if I'm wrong, this could be a big deal. We're still in the early afternoon, so there was another 6 hours before the sun sets, 5 hours before the sun sets. So the chance of me getting stuck there in the middle of the night were not really great. But if I did, if you're stuck there when it hits probably freezing and you're by yourself, that's not good because all I had on was a jacket and shorts. But I thought, you know what? Go with your instincts, go with the compass, go with what you think is right. So down the ridge, up the ridge, come up to the path, and sure enough, that was the right trail. Took the trail down to camp, or down to the trailhead, and there was nobody there except for the husband of the lady. So I asked him, hey, has anyone else come down the mountain? He said, nope, you're the first one. And he looked at me, he says, you got a funny look on your face. Where's my wife and her friend? And of course, the first thing I said is, now don't be worried. Well, as soon as I said that, he got worried. I told him the story, and he started to get upset. Understandably so. I said, look, they said they were going to the top. They said they were going to pick up the trail. They said they were going to come down. And that's the logical thing to do. It's what I should have done. But as the crow flies, I went the short route, even though it was not the easiest route, to say the least. I said, if they did what they said they were going to do, they should be here in about 40 minutes. So we waited around for about 30 minutes. At that point, the guy said, you know what? I'm going to go up and look for my wife. I said, okay. I said, well, wait a minute. Look, someone's coming down the path. And sure enough, it was the retired engineer who had found the trail. He was coming down next. And so we waited for him to come to camp. We told him the whole story. He said, no, I didn't see the ladies. And we talked about it for a little while. And he was in fantastic shape. So I said, you know what? I wanted to get a run in anyway. I'll run back up and look for him. I looked at him. I said, well, good for you. Congratulations for you. And he was just getting ready to run up there. And all of a sudden I said, wait a minute, listen, what's that noise? And I heard the sound of two ladies talking. Sure enough, here come the ladies down. And that's what they had done. They said, you know what? We can't find this knothead who wanted to go rambling through the wilderness by himself. We tried calling to him. He didn't hear us. So we went back to the top. We found the trail and we came on back down. And they got to camp about 40 minutes after me, just about the right time. So life was good. Everything was fine. We had a big joke. We wished one another well, and we went our merry ways. And I was relieved. I was happy. I was glad because I was able to actually, through all this was the first time I had summited and then came back down a mountain like this without my knees barking. I'd been doing exercises to strengthen my knees, and apparently it worked because my knees were in great shape. Sure, my legs were tired, but my knees were in great shape. They weren't barking, and I felt good. Felt so good. I'm going to go ahead and go back to camp. I'm going to have a beer. I'm going to do this. All of a sudden, the dashboard goes crazy. Low tire pressure. Sure enough, I blew a tire. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be off this gravel road onto a paved road shortly. I think the tire will make it. It's going down, 25 pounds, 24 pounds, 23 pounds. Okay. Finally, it's getting to about 18, 16 pounds, but I'm on the pavement now. So I get off the pavement and pull the car over, walk over the tire. Sure enough, you can hear that thing hissing away. I'd hit a sharp rock. And one thing that these rental car companies do is they don't change their tires very often. These tires were darn near bald. The car had 30,000 miles on them. The front tires weren't slick, but if these tires had been on my wife's car, they'd have been changed about 2,000 miles ago. Bad tires, pop the tire up, that's fine. Jacked up the car, got the donut out of the back, took the tire off. Before I could get the donut on then, I had forgot to set the parking brake. So the car leaches forward, bang, dumps into the gravel. Okay, now what am I going to do? This thing's laying flat on its belly in the gravel. And the jack's buried underneath it. Well, it is in the gravel, so I dig a little hole, get out the jack, make a little way, like a little foxhole for the jack that thing up high enough so I can get the donut on, tighten everything up, throw everything in the trunk. I'm on my way on a donut. Okay. Luckily, it's just pavement. There are no more gravel roads between here and camp, even though camp is gravel. But I get to Stovepipe Wells to get a can of Fix-A-Flat. Sorry, we don't have any Fix-A-Flat. Get to the Panama Springs Resort. They did have Fix-A-Flat. I put it in. Yeah, it kind of works, but you don't want to be driving around on Fix-A-Flat. The first thing it says on the Fix-A-Flat thing is, hey, look, do this. It'll probably work. But as soon as you can, you need to get a patch or a plug on this tire. Well, okay, I'm still 2.5 days before I'm going home. I'm not pulling the plug on the vacation, so I plan on going into Lone Pine the next morning, getting a proper patch on the tire. Come back to camp exhausted between my ordeal on the mountain and then the ordeal with the tire. And then what happens? We've got 40-mile-an-hour gusty winds ripping through camp, okay? And I'm looking at my tent. My tent is almost fallen down. One of the fiberglass poles was in the process of shredding. So I had to prop that up, fix it up, get it so it would halfway hold. But now how am I going to cook dinner? Because there's 40-mile-an-hour winds. Well, there was a cabin that you could rent that had a nice porch to it. Nobody was renting the cabin, so I went onto the porch, a little windbreak, cooked my dinner, enjoyed myself, cleaned up the mess, took a shower. By this time, it's 7 o'clock at night, and that wind is just howling through camp. The wind was so bad, and the dust was so bad, when the little pebbles from the gravel would hit you, it would hurt. I thought, that's it. I'm done. I went into my tent at 7 o'clock that night, listened to the radio, did a few things, ended up falling to sleep about 8 o'clock at night. 8:30 probably. About 8:30, 9 o'clock, I finally fell asleep. Woke up about 10 o'clock. The winds had died down. They had calmed down, so everything was good. Until midnight. In midnight, I was awakened out of a dead sleep by what sounded like a banshee screaming through the camp. I thought, what the heck is that? It sounded like a banshee. And then it did it again. And then a third time. And this is something right outside my tent, screeching and hollering. And actually, as soon as I woke up a little bit, it wasn't a banshee. It wasn't screaming. It wasn't hollering. It was braying. You see, in the desert, there's a lot of burros, donkeys that the prospectors had set loose. And they wander around wild out in the desert. Well, some had come into camp and had come into my camp right next to my tent and decided to do their screaming and braying 4 feet away from my tent. Now, are they going to hurt you? No, but they were loud. Okay. And, it kept me awake a little bit. So I laid there, settled down, went to sleep. About 3 o'clock in the morning, it happened again. Okay, here we go. So finally I get up at 6 o'clock. It's time to get up. It's time to make coffee, time to have breakfast. I did not get much sleep. I was worried about having to get the tire fixed, tired from the hike, tired from fixing everything, tired because I had no sleep. But that's okay. I had my breakfast. I drove into Lone Pine on Thursday morning and got my tire patched, got a cup of coffee, had a snack, did a little exploring along the way, got back to camp, stopped by Father Crowley Pass to watch the jets come through. No jets came through. Came home, had lunch, read my book, relaxed, took it easy. Watched the hippies go in and out of the desert. That in itself was interesting. They were a group of, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. I say hippies because they were young people with long hair, and they looked like they were very much free spirits. But every day in the morning, they'd all go out to the desert from camp, set up a big, like a little pop-up, do something out there, undo it, come back, have lunch in the restaurant, go back out there, set up the tent, and then come back just before dinner. They do this every day. And I kind of asked, hey, what are you guys doing out there? Just enjoying the desert. Well, what's going on? Just enjoying the desert. Okay, they didn't want to share it with me. That's fine. But the few that I talked to, they were pleasant. They were nice people. They were enjoying themselves. I have no idea what they were doing out there, but they were having a good time. Probably one of the highlights of the trip is what are normally highlights of the trip. And it's the people that I'm able to meet while in the desert. Now, this time there weren't many Europeans there. Most everybody in camp were Americans. And the vast majority of them, at least the ones I talked to, were retired. Some of them newly retired. Some of them been retired for a year or so. One guy had been retired for 12 years. There was a retired Boeing engineer and his wife. There was a retired Rocketdyne engineer who was there by himself. There was a retired Bay Area couple. They weren't retired, actually. They were IT guys, IT workers, a man and a wife. There was a couple from Reading who were in their early 40s who actually had a band, and they were filming scenes for their video for their band while they were in the desert. A retired LA couple that was in an old 1985 Volkswagen Vonnegut in perfect condition, absolute perfect condition. But just all kinds of people to talk to. And whether it was over a beer at night or coffee in the morning, you have good conversation with good people who, the conversation never gets above small talk. It never talks about politics. It may talk about the economy, how food's gone up, and et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, these people are there to relax and enjoy nature and enjoy one another's company, which is what we do. So you don't have confrontational confrontations. You have nice, pleasant, relaxing conversation with people that you really don't know what you have in common with them. But what you do know is that you have in common with them the love of camping in the desert, the love of the solitude, the quietness, the beautiful weather that you have out in Death Valley in the desert Southwest. That was, to me, the actual highlight of the trip, and it always is the people that you meet in camp. Thursday night is my dinner at the Panama Springs Resort. I go there, have a real proper dinner. The wind was very light. The burros were around. They were braying, but not at camp. They stayed out in the desert, so they didn't keep me up. It got chilly that night, down into the 40s, but I've got a good enough sleeping bag, so I wasn't cold. I will tell you, I got up a little later than normal. I didn't wake up any later than normal, but I wanted to stay hunkered down in that sleeping bag a little later than normal because I did not want to get up and weather the cold. Finally, when my bladder wouldn't take it anymore, I had to get up and do my thing, and got up, made coffee, made breakfast, cleaned up the mess, broke camp, and headed to Las Vegas. The tent, however, didn't make it back with me. I had this tent for about 10 years. It was a $40 tent. I got it at an Army surplus store. It had a hole in the bottom. It had a little bit of mildew on the side where I hadn't aired it out properly after a camping trip. Now it had a busted fiberglass pole. I thought, you know what? Enough is enough. I just throw the tent in the trash. I buy a new one when I get back to St. Louis. So, like I said, unpacked. I went back to Las Vegas by way of the Mesquite Dunes. Was going to go in onto the sand dunes I've talked about before, but I decided not to. There's a group of sand dunes that I've seen from camp. They're about 8.5 miles away. I've tried to walk there twice, but I hit my halfway point with my water before I got there both times. And that's a rule of the desert. You never, ever, ever go past the halfway point without your water. Last year, they found a Belgian man dead in those sand dunes. Now, it's funny. You can see those sand dunes from California Highway 190. That's the main highway that goes through Death Valley. You can see the dunes from there, which means he could see the highway from where he was. But he ran out of water, and there's no cell phone service. And he died last summer. About 100 feet from where they found his body, they found a skeleton of a lady who had been missing for 3 years. Had also died there. So you need to be careful when you go to those places because you could really get into trouble. Those two individuals did. But I found a route, a dirt road that would take you within 3.5 miles of the dunes. So instead of a 15-mile trip, it turned into a 7-mile trip, which is very doable. But then as I turned onto the gravel road, it was a rough gravel road. I thought to myself, I don't want to lose another tire and have to go through that nightmare again. So I thought, that's it. I'm not doing this. I turned around, went to the easy Mesquite Dunes, sand dunes that were right there on 190, stopped by the ghost town of Rhyolite, walked around there, went into the Rhyolite Museum, stopped in the town of Beatty. They've got a nice museum there, toured the Beatty Museum. Then I checked into the Hampton Inn on the corner of Tropicana and Dean Martin Boulevard, right across from In-N-Out Burger. Unloaded the car, washed off my face, went to the pool, read my book, relaxed, and just enjoyed the afternoon. About 5 o'clock, I got hungry, so I went back in, changed my clothes, took a walk from up Las Vegas Boulevard, from Tropicana up to where the Bellagio is. Watched the Bellagio fountains fire do their thing. Came back, stopped at Panda Express for a nice light dinner. Came back, called my wife, called my pop, went to bed. Because the next day I had to come home. And 2:30 wake-up call, so I needed to get to bed fairly early. Now, last but not least, I wanted to mention a little bit about the city of Las Vegas. The last couple times I was there, if you remember, I was not too enamored with the town of Las Vegas. In fact, I always liked it. I've never been a gambler, but I always liked the people watching. I always liked the excitement. I always liked all the stuff. But the last few times I went, it had turned into a drunken, druggied mess. Just a crap show, okay? And I was done with it. But you know what? Maybe the economy turned. Maybe I was in a better mood. Maybe, I don't know. But Las Vegas was back to normal. The good things that I liked about Las Vegas were there. The big crowds, the eclectic people, but they didn't bother you. Sure, the homeless were there. Yeah, sure, every place you go, you smelled pot because it's legal there. But maybe the last few times I went, because it wasn't very crowded, all that were there were the dregs of society. Maybe all those dregs were still there, but they're also packed with Mr. and Mrs. We're on vacation time. And it was really fun. The Mexicans flipping the cards to go to the nudie bars were there. The showgirls with, hey, take a picture with us for only $10 were there. The guys selling their music CDs on the sidewalk were there. Sure, the homeless were still there. The beggars were still there. But all in all, it was a nice experience. If you like that sort of thing, okay? I get it if you don't. But I found that Las Vegas is back to being fun. The price has gone up, like the price has gone up everywhere. I mean, the Tropicana, I got it free on Hilton Honors points. However, it costs $15 to park now, but they still don't charge you a resort fee. So that's better than nothing. Every other time I've stayed at this, the Hampton Inn on Tropicana, they've been able to give me, I've talked my way into a free drink ticket because I tell them, I said, look, I got to leave here before you serve breakfast. I'm not going to have breakfast. Your bar opens at 5. Can I have a free drink ticket? And they give me that instead. This time they would not budge. No free drinky for the strong man, even though I'm a lifetime diamond member. But that's okay. I would say that if that was the worst thing that happened on the trip was very much a success. Woke up at 2:30 a.m., got the shuttle, got on the plane, came home, and here I am. The adventure of a lifetime for the second time in 2023. I'm going to say this one more time, and those of you who've heard it, if you've heard it before, please bear with me. If you haven't heard it before, take note because it will do your soul a world of good. When I say the adventure of a lifetime 3 times a year, I'm not saying you have to spend time on the Gold Coast. You need to spend a week in Monaco on the French Riviera. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to have what some people would think is the adventure of a lifetime. And it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Flying to Las Vegas and camping in the desert is not that expensive. Now, sure, you got to buy the supplies and the cooler and all that, but you can drive to Las Vegas if you want to. Takes 2 days, 3 days if you want to take it easy, okay, and enjoy yourself along the way. It costs $15 a night to camp in the Panamint Springs Resort. I'd like to think that everybody listening to the sound of my voice can afford $15 a night. Used to be $7, but things went up. This place has a nice shower. There's water. There's no internet, but if you need to actually use a phone or something, they've got kind of a satellite internet set up at the gas station where if you get close enough and you need to make a call, you can. So if you have to make a call, you could. And you don't even have to go halfway across the country. You can go camping here in the state of Missouri or wherever you are. You can just go on a day trip and spend the night in a hotel, see some friends, or go see a buddy, stay at his house, okay? But I strongly recommend you do something. And I'm just not saying, me and my wife and I, we do that kind of stuff. Remember back in 2002, we went and we did this for the weekend. No. If 2002 is the last time since you've done something, you're doing it wrong. Do something fun. Do something that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be what I enjoy because that's not what it's all about. Do what you enjoy. Find something that you're passionate about. Find something that you are so excited about it the next morning that you have trouble sleeping the night before. That's how excited you are to leave. That's the adventure of a lifetime. Because I mentioned before, these people that I talked to in the camp are the highlights of the trip, and they are. And the quote of the trip came from the retired engineer. This was the guy that we saw climbing Wild Rose. He had quite a history. He lived in Sacramento, but had also lived in Detroit. He had lived in Alabama because that's where he went to school. But he was born in Iran. So he was of Iranian descent, but he had been in this country since he was 20 years old. So what is that, 45 years, okay? So he was an American of Iranian descent. The guy was 65 years old. The guy was in phenomenal shape, and he got into this great shape, said, look, I'm retired now. I can do this. I have time to do this. But he was almost disappointed that when he saw the ladies, he said, oh, shoot, now I can't go find those ladies because that was going to be my run for today. I'm driving from here to Sacramento. I won't get my run in today, just my hike. And so just playfully, I stuck my finger in his belly. I said, here, you can run now. Give me all your money. And he smiled, knowing I was joking. But he said, you know what? Seriously? He said, if you needed my money, I would just give it to you because I don't need the money. You can always get more. What I don't have enough of is time. You can't have that unless I give it to you. Time is what is most important. And he was so right. Everybody runs out of time. Actually, in this country, few people run out of money. Okay. They run out of the money to do the things that, the luxuries in life. But there are a few people in this country, if you're honest with yourself, who say, okay, we don't have any money, so there'll be no food this week. That just doesn't happen in this country. I'm not going to say it never happens. It doesn't happen enough to even mention because there's philanthropic organizations that will help you out. But you do run out of time. We all run out of time because eventually the clock strikes 12, the Lord calls you home, and that's it. You're done. D-U-N, done. And it doesn't matter if you have $1 in the bank account or you've got tens of billions of dollars in the bank account. None of that's going to do you any good because everybody runs out of time. Take that time. Do with it what you will. Decide what you want to do. Decide what you like. And take that adventure of a lifetime. Not just once, not just twice, but at least 3 times each and every year. Well, that's it. I'm done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's my email address. Go ahead and send me your email. I will send you a link to the show upon publication. You can download it and listen to it at your leisure. Hear me on Brad Hildebrand's Podcaster. Hear me on KSOQ. I think he still plays that. I don't even know. But iHeartRadio, Podcaster, where else am I? Spreaker.com, of course, Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, you name it, I'm there. Podbean. Yeah, the people listen to me on Podbean. GeoSavan. About 4% of my listening audience is in India. They listen to me on GeoSavan, believe it or not. But, or the easy way, send me your email address. I'll send you a link. You download it. You listen to it. That's the easiest way to do it. But do it however you want, but just do it. I appreciate it. That's it. I'm done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.